let's talk about iOS 13.5. It's now available. Apple released the GM version for developers and the public beta version for testers on Monday, and on Wednesday, Apple released the final version for everyone in the public. And this is the this is the version of iOS that includes what was once called as a feature contact tracing. Now it's called exposure notification, which is the API that developers, well, not just any developer, but that health developers can build an app for their state or country or region to assist in contact tracing with COVID-19 and contain the spread of that. So,
so
just to recap that.
Yeah. So it doesn't actually use your location. It only is listening out for, like, basically all of your phones act as a Bluetooth beacon, and they go back and forth. It registers devices that have been nearby using anonymous hashed identifiers that aren't directly corresponding to any particular person. It's just your device knows your own identifier, and then so over the week, your device can build up. Oh, okay, it knows I was near this other device for 10 minutes. I'll remember that. I was near this other device for 5 minutes. I'll remember that. I was in range of this one. And obviously, it's not a perfect system because you could technically be in range through a wall where you wouldn't actually be exposed to the virus. But this is the Bluetooth system that they're working on. It's short range Bluetooth, so there shouldn't be too many false positives in that regard. And so it can get a reasonable map of devices that you've been near, which proxies for people. And then if someone contracts the virus, they can then go onto one of these health apps, sign up, register, and say and report their condition. And the condition will supposedly be verified by the medical institution somehow. You probably have to get doctors sign off on it, right? Because that prevents abuse. Because it could be very easy just to annoy everyone. If it was just a free for all, it would only take like 3 people to say, "Oh, I've got it," when they don't, and then nobody would listen to the notifications anymore because they'd be just pointless, right? So they have to get verification, and then when the app reports to the Apple server or the Google server that this identifier is reporting as positive, then it can send a notification out through the app to all phones that have been in proximity of that identifier, and then you can know that you should probably be isolating for the time being, or to get tested because you've been in close proximity to someone who's since got the virus in the last week or so.
Yeah, so I was on. There was sort of a briefing on this today, and there's been multiple of these, and so every time it's because there's some change to the way that it will work before it's released, and now it's actually available. And some of the changes this week were that the public health agencies can define what does it mean to have an exposure event, so they can define if it's this incidence of time or if it's longer than some other one. So it's to get them to be on board with this. I think that was necessary, and then they can know how many exposure events a person had, which was missing before. Now that's quantified, and so these are some things that are different from before, but that seems to be that the agencies that are wanting to work with this wanted to have.
Yeah, because it's fair to say that while Apple and Google have been getting along, there have been much tension in actually getting countries, states, regions actually on board with this system, because there are people who don't want anything at all because they see it as an invasion of privacy, which is interesting. Like I saw someone who blogged like the exposure notification API is like the straw that breaks the camel's back into freeform, tracking of individuals. Well, for a start, the exposure notification API doesn't actually have any connection to your actual location. And one of Apple's rules and Google's rules about a partner making an app is that then the app's not allowed to collect location information or, telephone contact information or anything. It has to be anonymous. And if you actually think logically for 1 second, there's a direct GPS tracking tool inside all of your phones already. It's called Find My iPhone, right? Like, so if you're worried about that kind of stuff, it exists in your phone today, and you can go into the settings and turn Find My iPhone off. But you could, if you're going to be that paranoid about it, who's to say that toggle actually does anything, and Apple at any time can get your location when it wants to, right? Like, so if you have concerns on that basis, then you should already not be using an iPhone because it's too late already, right? Because those features are just inherent to the operating system. They're already there for very convenient reasons, that if you lose your devices, it can help find them again. And you just have to trust that the platform provider isn't abusing that power and just finding people's locations willy-nilly. So that's the one thing. And then the other part of this equation is the countries or the regions or the states that actually want to collect more data than what the Apple and Google system allows for, because Apple and Google are coming at this from a very privacy preserving approach, and they're trying to do the minimum really that they need to get useful data that can actually have an impact on contact tracing ultimately. But a lot of countries want to be able to get stuff like actual more precise location information. They want to be able to contact people directly and not just being this anonymous system. And so what we've seen over the last weeks and months is Apple and Google developing their sanctioned API, which is also better for just things like efficiency and battery life because it's built into the system, so it gets some privileges that third-party apps don't, and as well as just things like extended access to the Bluetooth stack and loads of other technical little tidbits like that. But then you've also seen all these other countries some of them are rolling their own apps and it not working so well, or they're doing it but nothing's really happening with it. And then you're getting all these people saying, we don't want to use the Apple and Google system. And so now is really the crunch time, because finally the Apple and Google API is available for use, for consumption. And so now a state or a country can theoretically release an app that includes the exposure notification API, and it needs iOS 13.5. Right now, if you just upgrade to iOS 13.5, nothing happens, because this whole thing doesn't do anything until you actually get a compatible app installed. And so here we are today. What app, Zach, from what state is supporting this right now?
Well, so a couple of things. I'll answer your question in a moment. But also to note that it's an update to Google Play services, so Android is also in the mix. Not to mean that means that this is any more active in the real world. Because Apple and Google say a number of states and 22 countries are interested in the exposure notification API. So it's less than a commitment to ship an app. The next step,
interest is very vague.
Yeah, very vague. So it kind of goes. But that's okay. The next thing is, I did ask what number, and there was not an answer to that. So, and then some more folks tried to re-ask the question and didn't really go any well. You get more specific, but so for the past several hours, I've contacted either the governor's press secretary or the communications secretary for every or both, for all 50 states in the United States, with the exception of North Dakota, because North Dakota, they have a website dedicated to this is ndresponse.gov. So in North Dakota, their website that's all about COVID-19 exposure notifications and how they're going to use this in their app, their Care19 app. And so there's no update from them yet about this, but they seem to be there's no question that North Dakota is like at the front of this in terms of like, where will this update be meaningful? So if you live in the great state of North Dakota, look out for the Care19 app if you want to put this feature to use. Apple also highlighted South Carolina and Alabama as committed to this, and so there are apps in progress. And before I'll go through the different street reactions, I had a couple other questions, but one was, is phase 2 still happening? Because early on in this, we explained on this podcast that there would be a phase 1 in mid-May and a phase 2 later in the summer. And phase 1 would mean that there would be an app, possibly from the CDC in the U.S. and it's NHS in the UK, right?
Yeah.
And so the health authority in each state or country would have an app that would work with this feature, and then a further in phase 2 there'd be some integration in iOS and Android that promotes this more than just you go download the app. It would still require an app to authenticate, but from
so in the phase 2 segment, what we expect to be the case is that your device will be able to start collecting the device identifiers from everyone else automatically and show notifications of nearby proximity alerts. but you'd still need the app to actually report yourself as positive, because then that would link directly to the health organization of your local region to get the validation from the doctor or whatever.
That's right.
Currently, nothing happens unless you have a supported app, and at the current time, there are 0 supported applications.
Yeah, and it was really unclear. It's like, will there be a phase 2 based on this? Because phase 2 is not mentioned at all in the latest round of just trying to inform the press on what's happening here. And the answer was phase 2 still happening. Don't know when. It gets more vague because it seems like phase 1 is more problematic than they'd hoped. And so, which states participate? We know North Dakota, and this is just looking at the U.S. And so my big complaint about this is that it wasn't certain before, but the hope was that there would be the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, in the U.S. They would have an app that every American could have on their iPhone or Android phone if they wanted to, and participate in this. And so it's one app per country, which is understandable. They can all be localized and made the way that they need to be made to meet local regulations. But instead what happened was it's one app per state in the U.S., and the U.S. is 50 states plus some territories, and then D.C. being the District of Columbia, not a state, just a body of people who live in the U.S. And so it seems to be that there will be one app per state. But will there be? Because I've contacted all states, and I have 11 responses back so far. This has been in the last hour and a half or so. But a number of states, including California, which is where Apple and Google are based, and Texas, which has a similarly large population to, is in the same category as California.
And a huge Apple campus being built there.
True. Yeah. I've got to put this together in a story, but I've got a tweet thread that is like, okay, this is what's happening. So I'll go through what I have. Tim Cook had tweeted, technology can help health officials rapidly tell someone they may have been exposed to COVID-19. Today, the exposure notification API we created with Google is available to help public health agencies make their COVID-19 apps effective while protecting privacy. And so my response to that was, this is really great. How do you participate? That's the next question. And the update, you read the release, it doesn't answer that question.
Yeah. Because you can't. That's the problem. Right now, you physically can't do it.
Yeah. And so the answer I put in my tweet is download your state's public health authority app for COVID. Which states are participating? Who knows? And we do know that Alabama is one that will participate. South Carolina is one that will participate. And North Dakota is ahead and starting this process. And I asked, does the home of the 2 companies that built the API participate? And then I heard back from Colorado, they are not considering this. Then I heard back from California, they have no plans yet. Can't rule it out yet though. Wyoming has made no decision. West Virginia has no plans yet. South Dakota, so North Dakota, they're doing
on board.
Yeah, they've got their app. South Dakota will not take advantage of the API because they have their own app that uses location data. So
that's like the UK situation.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the UK app has been delayed further. So even their app that doesn't use the decent API has now hit technical difficulties and is being delayed. It was meant to be out by now, but it's not.
Yeah, I want to pause here and just say kudos to the teams at Apple and Google who worked on this, because this thing changed rapidly, and it the first time they disclosed it was like 2 weeks old. So and they say mid-May, we're at the end of May and it's here, so it's pretty good. Yeah. Texas, they say that there is not, this is a quote, is not and will not, Texas is not and will not be using a phone app for contact tracing. So I don't think there's much wiggle room there. No plans for Ohio, no plans for Delaware. Not a no for Arkansas, but they say that they're currently investigating all innovative strategies for contact tracing. So not a yes either. And they had a really good point in their presentation today that was, before they kind of given the example of somebody going to the park and they meet somebody on a bench or pass by and they're exposed for long enough that's the thing, you don't know who it is. But contact tracing exists beyond the phone stuff. And so they gave the example of like if you have breakfast with a close friend and you get COVID-19, then it's easy to remember that you had breakfast with them, and to tell them, by the way, maybe you should be attested to. But if you're on a bus full of people, it's pretty anonymous.
Yeah.
And then back to the park analogy too. So, so maybe Arkansas, Dakota is good. Virginia, they didn't say no. They actually told me that they're holding a press briefing tomorrow on contact tracing. So possible, yeah. Pennsylvania is continuing to determine our next steps as far as contact tracing apps. Okay, so
like, I think you can get the picture there that
Yeah.
it probably hasn't gone as well as Apple and Google originally hoped to get, support for it. And ideally, there would just be one app for the entire United States, and that hasn't happened. So now we're in this fragmented system where it's state by state, and only the exception of those 3 or 4, there's you would kind of hope that more of them would at least be saying we've committed to support this, down the road. I think it would be unreasonable to expect all these states to have apps ready to go out the door, day and date with the OS release.
Yeah.
But you would hope there'd be more, green lights in terms of, yes, we're working on this and we're going to release it, by June or by July, right? Because obviously, I'm a developer. I understand like the implementation cost here, and this stuff you cannot make overnight. And there's a lot of server complexity that all these states have to, fund, develop, test before the stuff can come out. So, 2-3 months delays on actually getting these apps out the door is perfectly understandable. But at this point, it doesn't even feel like most of them even started. They're just, not interested. There's political problems holding them up. And, that's why it's a bit of a shame, really. And I don't know why, like, the phase 2, like, in hindsight, would it have been better for Apple to, like, prioritize what they would have done in phase 2 earlier? Do you know what I mean? Like, and so you'd get a bigger impact on society sooner, even if the Apple integrate into the operating system stuff would have taken 4 months instead of 2 months to get the API out the door. At least when it does come out, they can, be assured they're actually making a big impact to every single, Apple user. I think the problem they have there is the part which is the cooperation with the health institutions about validating the reporting. That's probably why they want to do this first, because then they can piggyback on, the apps that don't exist to provide the, validated reporting, and then just build the notification stuff into the system. But clearly, I think it's pretty obvious that they haven't got the response that they wanted, right?
Yeah, and so a lot of those are kind of maybes, and then there's many, many more I haven't heard back from yet, and I was amazed at how many people responded, so soon. So it could be that that's a minority representative, but then that we'll hear that the ones that haven't replied, are they're all for it. But I was surprised that California was not one of the states that was like, we've been working with Apple and Google, and we, and the whole 50 different apps approach is tough. Like I get it. That's the whole thing with the U.S. is that it's a country, but it's 50 different states, and so with very different rules in each state, and they tend to be represented differently, and so and that makes sense. But with this, it's too bad that there's not like a sample app that you can just adopt and like investigate and see if it fits your needs, and then you say, okay, that's this. And maybe there is. I mean, there's a lot of sample code and everything, but
the bit that's missing, I think, is the server side stuff. Like, it's quite getting the app out the door, which is just a UI to like sign up for the API and then say and send off a form to report is like the easy part. The hard part is the server infrastructure of like saving the identifier, send a notification. That's the bit where they're struggling technically to get it done.
Yeah. So again, like, just to air my grievances, I'm annoyed that it isn't a for the U.S. at least a country approach. And I'm sure that there are some political aspects to it. The 3 states that are so far yes are led by Republican governors. So that I had a friend who said, this is probably going to be, a thing that's decided by party, and so far it's the opposite of that, at least in terms of the response. So there are, we'll see what New York does. I've got nothing back from New York yet. We know California, which is led by a Democratic governor, is not decided yet. We'll see what Virginia says. They have a Democratic governor, but so far it's 3 for 3 Republican governors. And then a lot of unknowns, and then many, many, many no's. So
yeah, and it should be stressed that the exposure notification system is not the one thing to rule them all, right? Like, it's just one element of a very big strategy that everyone needs to get on board with to to deal with the pandemic, but it's something that that Apple and Google have come together with and obviously put a lot of effort into over the last month and a half to actually collaborate and get something unified out the door that, at least from a theoretical perspective, could be very easily distributed to millions and millions of people. Even if it's only 1/10 of the overall strategy at defeating the virus, that's a 1/10 times everyone in the world, because by approximation everyone in the world has some form of iOS or Android device, right, of some kind of smartphone. Realistically, like, yes, it's not everyone, but it's a big percentage, and no other schemes that people have come up with will ever have that kind of reach if it's actually realized with partnering applications.
Yeah, I had a lot of questions, and I had to choose one, and luckily it got out there in the beginning, and some reporters kind of repeated it in hopes of an answer. But like some things that I wondered were one was like, when will we see an app? And so the answer there is kind of North Dakota looks like to be like leading there. And then is there any assistance from Apple or Google in developing that? We don't really know. I had a comment which was, it's too bad that the update to iOS 13.5 doesn't have like a new set of emoji, which we know how that actually goes, is they just make them up, but they could do a new Animoji, where they're like, you got to have these 3 new ones, and that drives adoption way up.
So 13.5, obviously the exposure notification thing is the main thing, but as we talked about before, it does have the tweak to Face ID, which helps if you're wearing a mask, right? So it's like it can quickly notice that your face is partially obscured and immediately show the passcode dialogue. Yeah, and that actually helped me about a week ago. I was just like resting on the sofa or whatever, drinking tea, and the mug was to my face, and I tried to unlock my phone, and it immediately came out the passcode screen. I was like, wow, that's really useful.
Yeah.
So
this whole time,
obviously, like, the mask is the motivation and the reason why they've done it, but it does crop up in other scenarios. And then the other thing they've done in this update is the FaceTime thing, where you can turn off the automatic zoom in if that's getting in your way for a busy meeting.
Yeah. So, also, this was kind of like the first question, but it was just too optimistic. It's like, based on previous iOS updates, is there any sense of what sort of adoption to expect in the first few weeks for this update? But that immediately became like, doesn't matter, because we acknowledge that this approach, because it has to balance privacy and effectiveness and power and everything else, that it's not the most effective, and that it would rely on adoption of the iOS update or the Google Play Services update alone, and then downloading the app. But then the next thing is that just in the short term, that there's not a next step to it. So we'll see. And then the last thing I was thinking about asking before I got down to my, like, this is what I'm going to ask, is there any consideration for the iOS 14 beta? Because oftentimes we'll say, like, that's finished, and that you think a lot of developers and testers will go to that, and it won't have the feature. But these all became like kind of irrelevant. It's like,
if the apps aren't there,
it was like, there's one important question: which states?
Yeah.
So that was
a sad conclusion.
It's the start of things to come, let's say.
Yeah, and it would be great if there were apps already available, but at least the infrastructure's there now. So if there are second waves, or if there is, because I think a lot of people expect social distancing measures to continue well into next year, right? So even if it takes 6 months for some of these countries to get on board and actually do it, at least the stuff's there for it to be done now. So
yep.
There you go.
Yep. All right. Let's talk about watchOS 6.2.5, which at a high level has the ECG app for electrocardiogram in the country of Saudi Arabia. You also have heart rhythm notifications for irregular heartbeat rhythms in Saudi Arabia now. The big thing is that Apple released a couple of new Apple Watch bands for Pride 2020, retired the Sport Loop from Pride 2019, and they've got updates to the Pride watch faces, and then they have a new color on other watch faces. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so for the first time, so they started doing the Pride bands in 2016, but that was only for employees, because they had when they did the Pride March in San Jose or whatever,
San Francisco,
gave
right?
out San Francisco. They gave out the watch bands to the employees who were marching, and so that was kind of fun. And then the next year they actually made those bands available to the public. And
very small variation, but pretty much it was like a woven nylon style band that with rainbow colors.
And so then at the WWDC that year, it was like a big surprise thing where they announced, okay, and we're releasing a WatchOS update next week that will include these cool Pride bands to celebrate, Pride Month, which is generally June, and you can go out and buy the bands. They then followed up on that the year after with a different band, and that also then came along with it a different watch face on the UI, because you could choose between the 2018 style or the 2019 style. And the 2019 one was the Sport Loop, right? Yeah, the Sport Loop.
Sport Loop, yeah. So instead of being... so there's woven nylon, then there was... which has like the buckle. Then there's Sport Loop, which is also nylon, but with like the Velcro attachment. And then...
Yeah, and now in 2020, they're doing Sport bands. So the normal rubber band type style, they have done one which is... it's kind of like... They've it's like a rainbow, obviously, right? And
yes.
But they describe it as sort of like pseudo handmade, because each of the 5 strips are somehow assembled by a human, and then it's put in a machine that compresses them together. And so the strips aren't uniform. If you actually look up close, they're like jagged edges, and like the idea is that each one is slightly different and unique. And Apple calls it artful or something, to those artfully unique or something along those lines. Personally, I would kind of prefer if the bands were just like straight lines, because if you get a particularly dodgy one, there's just going to be this weird angle in the thing. But that's at least it's different, right, to what they normally do. And then for the first time, they've also done a second band this year in collaboration with Nike, which is their like sport band things. And obviously the Nike ones have the perforated holes around the band, and it's a white band, but the little inlets on each of the holes are the rainbow colors, and that one actually looks really cool.
Yeah. So they say the Pride Edition sport band is assembled by hand from individual strips of colored fluoroelastomer. The strips are then machine die cut and compression molded together. This process results in subtle variations in the wavy rainbow design, making each band artfully unique. I think it's kind of neat because it's like, for one, it kind of explains to me why they didn't do this before. Because it's. I mean, maybe they can. There's a way they can do it where they're all straight. I'm sure there is, but they didn't.
Come on, Apple's the beast coming the world. They can make 5 colors be straight lines on a bit of rubber.
But it isn't that it's individual strips of fluoroelastomer, so it isn't just like. Well, I guess it'd have to be anyway. It would be color, but because they do like tones throughout bands and like inside outside kind of thing, but it kind of makes it feel more like handcrafted, even if it's like it's just like placement, and then there's a lot more machinery involved. I'd love to see a video of this being done. And then when you look at the watch faces that it kind of corresponds to, they have those playful effects where like the things kind of move around, and it kind of reminds me of like the analog version of that digital effect. I ordered the Nike version because it's mostly white, and the colors are like you mentioned, accents within the perforated holes around the band. And it's a really cool style. And the inside is kind of like a gray color. So you get like a gray inside, and then at the very bottom, it's Pride 2020 is how it's labeled. So it's kind of cool. And then so that's neat. And this seems to be like a really popular one. And so I do want to get the other one though, just because I've seen pictures and they look neater in person than they do on the website. And
the color palette's slightly more pastel, right? And that's reflected in the watch face as well, because they're just like a bit more brighter and a bit more like in your face, right? And the watch faces are cool because they added on the normal Pride face, they've now added the 2020 style, so you get the 5 strips on analog, and then you get the kind of concentric rectangles on the analog face. But differently to last year, they've made it so that it's seamless edges rather than before they kind of gave little gaps, pinstripe gaps, which made it look more like the woven nylon style, right? So it matches there. But also what's cool is that they've added rainbow options to several of the other faces.
There's a new face color,
Yeah. So the color style of rainbow on several other faces, including so first I spotted it on the gradient face, but it's also on Numerals Duo. It's on the Nike faces, which obviously makes sense because they did a Nike band, and it's on California as well. And I think that's it. But there's quite a lot of. So there may be one or 2 others, but quite a lot of different bands, quite a lot of the different faces now. You can get a pretty cool, like funky look just by changing the color style from like a flat color to the rainbow effect.
Yeah.
And so I've been rocking the square California one for the last few days in the rainbow style. It's like black background and then rainbow indices, and that looks really cool. You can get circular ones as well. The Nike, unfortunately, the Nike watch face is still exclusive to if you've bought the Nike the Nike face or the Nike watch from the Apple Store, obviously. Okay. But the Nike faces all have rainbow options as well, and they look really cool with little like dotted colors and stuff. So I think they've done a really good job of bringing it all together.
Yeah, the California I like a lot. I mentioned this on my Watch Time podcast for 9 to 5 Mac. That I've been using the infograph face with like a white background, and then the complications are all color then, because I just needed like a little bit more color in my life for cheer. And in the California face, you can choose the color, but it's like one color and not color complications. But having the dial be rainbow color, it's like, okay, that's what I wanted, that's what I needed, that's really cool. So, and then it goes really well with the band. So I like these. There's been some trouble with getting these to work. I think there were 2 watchOS releases.
It wouldn't be an Apple software release without some bugs.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's too bad. But hopefully you can find these in your release, and the bands are $49 each, so you can purchase those if you're interested in those.
Yeah, generally if the faces aren't showing up, it seems like you just have to kind of like restart your watches a few times, and eventually pop into life and you can find them.
Yeah, unless you live in Russia, where the Pride face and bands are not available, and I presume the rainbow color wouldn't be available either, because it's the connection to LGBTQ, which is a portion of the proceeds from the band sales go to groups that are supporting organizations, and so in Russia they opt out of having this be available. So,
get out Russia.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's cool, and it was this is about the right time, because last year they did them like the 16th of May, and so this was only a few days after that. But it's nice that they've done more than just one Pride face style, on the watch itself. The rainbows give a nice little like spruce up if you're getting a bit tired of the existing faces.
Yeah, and then California would be one that's only on the Series 4 and 5. Yeah, but then and then Pride you have on either one, on any model with watchOS 6, and then Numerals Duo is also on the older model, so it's the only like new watchOS 6 face that went to the Series 3. And that's a neat one, because you can change the style of it to be like full color, top like the hour and solid, and the minute be not just the outline.
Outlined, yeah.
Yeah. And then on the or all outline, and then on the Series 5, because you've got the always on display, the rest version of that face where it's not fully lit is the outline. So if you use the full color, then it's like you've got to. You no longer choose your color. It's like every color. So it's neat.
That's cool.
Yep. So I've got the Nike Sport version with the white ceramic watch, and it is beautiful. I love it. So it's cool.
We are sponsored this week by Pillow. Getting a good night's sleep is underrated, but with a little help, it can be life-changing. Pillow is an all-in-one sleep tracking solution to help you be more aware of your sleep patterns and discover what might be affecting your sleep quality. If you have an Apple Watch, tracking your sleep is as easy as wearing it to bed. Pillow will track and analyze your sleep automatically. One of Pillow's most loved features is the ability to get a detailed heart rate diagram of every sleep session. You can compare your sleep quality with your weight, steps, caffeine consumption, and many other health metrics to discover how they might be affecting how you sleep. And you can enable recording to save the sounds that you make during sleep. Pillow will pick up things like sleep talking, sleep apnea, snoring, or just other unexpected noises in the night. And a lot of users have been surprised by the results. Of course, Pillow is very privacy-minded. All of your sleep and audio data is encrypted and stored on device. And when you're syncing to iCloud, it's using end-to-end encryption. Pillow doesn't have user accounts, so you can use it anonymously, and it won't collect or send your personal data anywhere else. And if you're working from home, you can take naps using Pillow's power nap modes. Naps help boost your focus, creativity, and overall well-being. And with watchOS 6, Pillow's taking advantage of the extended runtime API to minimize battery consumption when you're waking up with an alarm. Pillow is available on the App Store for iPhone, Apple Watch, and iPad. Discover all of Pillow's features at neighbox.com/pillow. That's neybox.com/pillow. Sleep well and stay safe. Our thanks to Pillow for their support of Happy Hour.
Let's talk about the iPhone 12 and what may or may not come in the box.
Yeah, we're talking about the gift that, in this case, doesn't keep on giving.
No.
Because Apple analyst Min-Chi Kuo was out today with a report that was saying that he believes that Apple may not, and it wasn't definite. He said may not. That was his wording. May not ship the wired EarPods headphones in the box of the iPhone 12. And ever since the original iPhone, Apple has shipped headphones in the box, so you get free headphones. Obviously, from the iPhone 5 in 2012, they changed from the old earbuds to the new EarPods style, which kind of look like AirPods. And then when they dropped the headphone jack on the iPhone 7, the wired EarPods became Lightning EarPods. And then a couple of years after that, they dropped the dongle, because if you wanted to use the 3.5 meter to the Lightning dongle, that was there for 2 generations, and they got rid of that. But this year, Kuo believes that they're going to get rid of another freebie accessory that you get bundled, so you won't get headphones anymore. You just get the iPhone and then USB cable and then the power brick.
Yeah, you seem to care about this, and I don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I mean...
Yeah. Well, I mean, not the story itself. The story is interesting, but
yeah.
What's in the box, right?
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you a question. I'll phrase it this way, right? So the Apple TV does not come with a HDMI cable in the box.
No, PlayStations do, Apple TVs don't. It makes no sense.
Do you find it annoying that they don't? Do you think it's stingy?
Because
that the
it's
HDMI cable is
essential
left
to
out?
use that product. Yeah,
Yeah, because you literally cannot plug in the Apple TV without the cable.
that's right.
So that one annoys you more than the headphones one, because
I'm also annoyed
still-
that the Apple Watch Series 3 brand new now doesn't come with a charging puck adapter, just the magnetic charger and the USB. Because it's essential to charging it. They assume you have one already, or that you'll buy one separately.
yeah, that's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But then on the iPhone, you do get the charge. You're just not going to get the EarPods anymore.
You're not going to get the EarPods, yeah. And I think it's so much more different than the other situations because, there are AirPods, but it's not just AirPods. Like, you can have lots of other headphones that aren't AirPods. I think that the EarPods, in my experience, I've never been able to wear them comfortably. Last week I had family, and they were replacing phones, and they went to the iPhone 7 without a headphone jack for the first time for them. And they were like, okay, I'll use these headphones in the box, but then they didn't fit at all. They were like, these are no good. So they used the adapter, and then they used their own headphones. I think that what comes in the box is not great at all, and is pretty wasteful in the end. And the fact that it's Lightning headphones, not a 3.5 millimeter headphones. It's only to be used with the iPhone. You can't even use it with your iPad Pro. If it's got USB-C, you can't use it with your Mac. So it's like an iPhone specific accessory, and it's pretty niche. What comes in the box now. So I think it's a lot of waste and filler. I think if you were ordering online, like maybe it would be fair to be like throw it in. I don't know, but
yeah, obviously this is more psychological than practical, right? Because
Sure.
what you just said makes perfect sense, and I'm going to hold my hands up. In my iPhone 12, in my iPhone 11 Pro box right now, is still the headphones in the same packaging. Like, I never unwrapped them, but if they weren't there, I'd have been like, damn, Apple, be nice.
How did you feel about the adapter not being in the box? That was different because it was like time to move on.
Yeah, I guess with the adapter, I guess if they'd have taken out the headphones and left the adapter, I'd have been annoyed. But because they still had the headphones in there, but the adapter's gone, at least you can actually use it with the thing that you brought in. Like, you don't have to make an additional purchase, because that is the thing right at the moment, is that if you want to use wired headphones now, you're going to have to use some form of proprietary headphones, right? Like, if you don't want to use wireless headphones, and obviously Apple supports any Bluetooth headphones, not just AirPods, but if you want to use wired, and people do, now you're going to be forced to buy Lightning headphones, essentially, because who wants to use that $9 dongle?
Well,
so you've either got the Apple option, which is $29, or like Belking makes some Lightning headphones, and they're like 30 or 40, and that's like your only option. So it feels kind of punitive. It's kind of like if Apple had stopped including. I mean, I guess chargers are different because you need chargers to actually make the product turn on.
And Nintendo does that with the DS, right?
Yeah, and I think that's annoying as well.
Yeah.
Like, that is bad too.
Yeah.
I guess it's the same difference between like Apple including 5-watt power chargers versus 30-watt power chargers, right? Like it
Air-
feels
AirPods don't come with a brick. You've got to charge with your phone or have your own. And the same is true for the Apple TV remote. They come with a lightning cable but no brick.
Yeah, you're making some good points. It's hard. Like, I guess it is kind of arbitrary, right? What comes with what.
And
the
iPads
fact is-
have never come with headphones ever. iPods always did, which is why iPhones do, because they had the iPod app, and it was like, this is the next iPod. Maybe there's some data on how much stuff gets plugged in too. That it's like, does anyone ever plug something into that port? Do they ever plug in something with a lightning connection to that port that isn't an adapter? Because I would argue that it's probably way more common to use the bad adapter with your preferred pair of headphones, because they are preferred for some reason, than to use the headphones that come in the box, or to buy the things from Belkin, or
I don't know. If you look in the real
to
world,
buy the
though,
things from
so
Beats
many
has them
people
too.
just use the Apple headphones because they come in the box, right? Like, I feel like when you're walking around, if they're not wireless headphones, they're always like the Apple ones, always. Like, they're so common, and I feel like that is why it wasn't such a problem when they dropped the headphone jack, because they still kept including headphones in the box, so people couldn't get annoyed. It's like, okay, I'll just use these now, right? Like, whereas when they did the 30-pin to Lightning transition, people didn't have Lightning cables sitting around everywhere, or the accessory, so everyone got mad. But in the headphones case, it was like, okay, I've got these headphones now, they're in the box, I'll just carry on and use those. Like,
Sure.
Obviously, up to now, every iPhone has come with headphones, so when they remove it, people are going to complain, including me, and we'll whine and moan. But then I guess next year, when the headphones aren't there again, will anybody really care? Like, that's probably the summary of the situation, is that I guess people just move on. The AirPods thing, like, because one of the other things Quo says in this report is that Apple might do
a question before you go there. It's not your editorial that the headline is, quote, Apple may not include EarPod headphones and iPhone 12 box to boost AirPod sales. It's not your editorial that's the reason. That's what Quo is positioning, right?
That is what Quo says. He says that Apple wants to sell more AirPods, and they've had a dip in sales, obviously in this quarter because of the pandemic, right?
Sure.
And so he says that removing the built-in headphones will encourage more people to buy AirPods. Plus, Apple may be preparing to do some kind of like bundle or promotion for the AirPods in the run-up to the holiday season.
Yeah.
Because if we think about the Quo report from a week ago or so, he said there's not going to be any new AirPods revisions hardware-wise this year at all, right? Like, both AirPods Normal and AirPods Pro are not getting third-generation or second-generation models until 2021. So you're going to have 18-month-old second-gen AirPods on sale this Christmas. So maybe there's some opportunity there for Apple to push the price down a little bit or do some bundling deals, right? So, I think it'd be very blatant if suddenly the iPhone 12 comes out and then you can buy it with the AirPods for $50 less or something. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like very clearly, well, you're not getting headphones anymore, but just for a little bit more money, you can get some for free, right? Like, or get some included. So, and the idea of Apple bundling AirPods for extra cost is kind of circulated around for the last few years, right? So maybe this is the year they finally do it. If they're not going to do that, I feel like maybe they could just like bump the AirPods price down a little bit, because it's still $159 at the moment for the base second gen AirPods with a non-wireless charging case. Like, the fact that it's now been almost by this fall, those headphones will have been unchanged for 18 months, closing on 2 years. So if they could just do some minor pricing action there, like $99 would be fantastic, but more realistically, maybe $129, or just the fact that the $159 one now comes with the wireless charging case instead of the wired one. Like, give us something in return, right? Like, if you're going to strip the wired AirPods out, be like, but we love AirPods, and clearly AirPods are very popular, right? But there's a difference between like forcing people to have to buy something and then like offering something better and then people opting to buy it, if you know what I mean.
The sales that I've seen Best Buy do some $20 off, so instead of $160 it's $140, so $139, and that feels better. And the second generation AirPods are not so different from the first generation AirPods. I mean, they got a different chip for like some minor efficiency improvements. They got voice activated Siri, but I think that's okay, because it's kind of like AirPods were a phenomenal hit because AirPods were really great. And it's hard to match the system stuff that Apple's doing there if you're not the iPhone maker.
Correct.
So I kind of view it as like a thing that, like, if AirPods 1 never changed because there's not this ability even for someone else to do much better, then they don't have to change that much. And what we saw was, instead of having a big upgrade, they had a different version of with AirPods Pro with noise cancellation and transparency with in-ear tips. So we'll see what happens.
Like I think the second gen AirPods are very good products that could stay around for years, right? And if Bluetooth wireless stuff was just as cheap as EarPods were, Apple would have bundled them originally, but they're not going to do that. And now that they've become such a phenomenon, they want to keep the price margin on them, right? Because
all they have to do is release black.
Did you see that HTC thing this week, by the way?
Yeah, isn't HTC owned by Google now?
No, I think they sold them. I think they sold them off.
They sold them
they were owned by Google at one point, but they got sold off again. Yeah. There was this FCC filing where HTC are bringing out what looked like a very, very similar to AirPods clones, including a very, very similar charging case, and they're nearly identical, apart from they come in black.
And the charger is a USB-C port instead of Lightning, of course. So, which would be desired for someone like me with a MacBook Pro and iPad Pro with USB-C. So,
Apple did black AirPods, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, I already replaced mine whenever they're like half missing, half non-functional. Just to get engraving. So I would certainly do it for color. And speaking of color, like if they had colors that matched the iPhone, the phones, then that would be popular too. So we'll see what happens there. I just want to make sure that was because I'm a little bit skeptical of that to sell more thing. I don't know. I think you could debate that.
I'm sure if you pressed Apple and they come up with some environmental reason that we know that most people just leave them in the box and it just turns into landfill and waste. So I'm just repeating what Quo said there.
Right.
But I think it is true that even if it wasn't the reason for doing it, which it may or may not have been, if you don't include headphones in the box, you are indirectly going to cause more people to buy headphones from you, right? And you don't have 3.5mm jacks on your phones anymore, so you are, at least encouraging people to get some sort of proprietary wired headphone, and then likely push AirPods at the same time because they love to sell them when you check out, right? So there are indirect consequences there, even if it wasn't we just want to make some more money, let's ship them out right now for that purpose.
Yeah.
Clean My Mac X is an all-in-one cleaning and optimizing software solution for your Mac. A single package that combines the most useful features for spring cleaning your computer. You can scan for outdated junk files and easily work out what is using up all your valuable hard drive disk space using the Space Lens tool. It makes a virtual map of how your storage is distributed across all of your files and folders. You can easily declutter caches, old logs, mail attachments you no longer need, and so much more. Clean My Mac X detects it all, and you can potentially save gigabytes of space with a single click. Because unfortunately, when you remove a Mac program, often it leaves behind little preference files and caches that your computer's no longer using or needs. And there really isn't a good way to clean that craft out using built-in operating system features. But that's where Clean My Mac X can come to the rescue. And Clean My Mac X is also designed to be super easy to use. The app will show you step-by-step explanations for every component, so you can be fully confident in the tweaks that you're making to your computer. And it features a system report menu, a dashboard of stats like free space, CPU load, used RAM, and other essentials, a beautifully designed menu, and it offers a sneak peek at the state of your entire system. Visit macpaw.com/podcast to download Clean My Mac X today and use coupon code HAPPYHOUR to receive 5% off. Upon visiting macpaw.com/podcast, click the Buy Now button and then scroll to the bottom of the screen to enter the code HAPPYHOUR before completing your purchase. Clean My Mac X is also newly available to download in the Mac App Store. Thanks to MacPaw and Clean My Mac X for sponsoring Happy Hour.
All right, let's talk about Apple TV stuff. Apple has, let's see, they've got some new content coming, which was a lot. They had this whole issue of they can't make new shows during the pandemic. They worked around that a little bit for one episode of something. They lucked out and got some new content, and then there's rumors about what they will do to kind of fill the hole there. So what's going on in Apple TV Plus at large?
Yeah, so Mark Gurman from Bloomberg had a nice report this week that was basically saying that Apple is pursuing and has already bought some catalog content for both that they're courting Hollywood content owners for TV shows and movies that already exist, and they're just getting licensing rights to offer to TV Plus customers. And this is a pretty big deal because up to now, Apple has been very strong on the messaging that Apple TV Plus is about originals only. We're starting from zero with brand new content for you. This is what we're doing. They didn't bring out the checkbook 2 or 3 years ago and buy one of the big studios or something like what we saw Disney do, right? To great success, obviously, because Disney has, Disney Plus is a great service and it has loads of stuff, like 7,500 hours or something of just, endless shows. And a lot of them are from the Disney archive, but they also, brought Fox on board and Hulu and all that sort of stuff is like getting rolled into one.
Not to mention Marvel and Star Wars. And
yeah, exactly. Like you could endless content there. But they did spend the checkbook on it, right? Like I think total content acquisition for Disney Plus cost them like 100 billion, right? Because 70 billion was buying Fox, right? So it's this huge thing. And then you look at like HBO, which is about to launch HBO Max at the end of this month, and they spent 70 billion getting Time Warner and conglomerate AT&T and all this stuff, right? These huge companies spent a lot of money to get big back catalogs, and then you have Apple, which has this big checkbook and lots of money, but they resolutely did not do that, and they went with this original strategy. And that's what they were doing. Even as recently as the February 26th Apple investor meeting, the shareholders meeting, which just slotted in before the pandemic happened, so they did actually have investors on site at Apple Park. They asked a question about TV Plus because at that time HBO had just secured the rights for the Friends kind of like reunion show, which is not a remake of Friends. It's just like they're getting the Friends cast together to have like interviews and stuff and like look back on the franchise. And someone asked him, why didn't Apple bid for the Friends reunion? And Tim Cook, repeated the party line and said, that's not what Apple TV Plus is about. We want originals. It wouldn't feel right for Apple to just go out and get a rerun. But now fast forward 2 months later, and all of a sudden Apple's buying old content that is essentially reruns, right? Like it's a bit of a non sequitur. And I think the only reasonable answer is what you said, in that the pandemic has kind of forced their hand, right? It's delaying content production on their original slate, and everyone's stuck at home a lot more than normal, so everyone wants to watch more stuff. So the typical approach that they were going to take with TV Plus, where you can just kind of like, take some time. Apple has enough money to have the patience to sit around and build up their catalog. They've gone from 8 to 16, now they're up to 30 shows. As we spoke about before, they'll probably top 100 by the end of next year, right? And so that kind of build up is fine. And if you're doing all the originals, then you just have to accept that in your first year, in your first 2 years, your service isn't going to be that appealing because you don't have that much stuff. And that is what it seemed like Apple had accepted. But now they've kind of done like a U-turn and are at least going to have some existing content on the platform. The Bloomberg article says that Apple isn't chasing like huge IPs and the focus is still going to be on originals, but they are getting some stuff, and we don't know exactly what they've bought out yet, and there hasn't been announcements officially yet, so we have to like see exactly watch, because half the problem is now they're just doing it too late. Like if they wanted to just buy content, they should have done it 3 years ago when stuff was still available. I feel like a lot of the big names now are just already attached to a streaming service, whether it's Netflix, HBO, Disney, or whatever else. Like it's already gone off the market. So it'll be interesting to see what stuff they can even get there.
As a person who is, I will probably pay. I mean, I'll definitely pay to see like the next seasons of shows that I enjoy, and then hope that there's more stuff that I continue to enjoy. But now will be less that can be made for a little while. But from a customer's perspective, it's nothing but good news. It's just like you're just gonna have more to watch. Like more, it's gonna be a better product than all.
Yeah. Like I don't want to say it's like the wrong thing to do. It's just weird strategically for them to have eschewed it for so long, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, we need some more content. Like I guess they just didn't predict a global pandemic that would scupper their plans of content demand and content production, which I guess is fair enough. The other thing that was in this Bloomberg report was the claim that in February, the February data, and this was by sources, this wasn't like some analyst prediction, right? This was supposedly Apple's actual numbers. So as of February, TV Plus had 10 million users, 10 million signups, right? So that includes people paying and the free trials. And then about 50% of those were actively using the service. So they were actively watching shows. So you have 5 million active, 10 million total. Obviously, that immediately draws comparisons to like Disney Plus's 50 million number already. And, that launched like 2 weeks after TV Plus. And Netflix added 16 million new subscribers in the last quarter alone, right? So more than, Apple's total. And I guess some people were like, well, look, clearly TV Plus is a failure if they've only got 10 million. I don't think it's that. I think it's about to be expected, right? In February, they only had 15 shows, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from a service that has 15 shows and that's it, right? Like, the TV Plus is still so new that in the 2 months since that data has been current, they've almost doubled the total number of content they have. Like, they're almost up to 30 at this point. So I feel like 10 million with half of them being active is pretty good, especially when you consider some of their biggest content, like The Banker came out in March. The Beastie Boys story came out in April. That was popular. Defending Jacob has apparently been like their most successful series since The Morning Show. That was April. They released more shows than any other previous month in April. So, and obviously the pandemic happened. So if you do some projections, some estimation, it's not hard to think they might be up to 15 million by now, right? With the extra 2 months on and the boost from all those different things. So I feel like that number is perfectly respectable. But obviously in the context of the Bloomberg report, it was kind of framed as like, oh, Apple's only got 10 million, so now they're like scrambling to buy this like library content. I don't necessarily buy that storyline as much, but it's cool to actually get some numbers because obviously Apple never tells you anymore, right? So, yeah. But I think 10 million's like okay. Everyone like freaks out about the free year thing, but just consider what Apple Music did, right? Apple Music, you get a 3-month free trial for anyone with an Apple ID, right? You can get 3 months. So that Apple has been giving 3 months free to every single customer that's owned any single product since 2015 when Apple Music launched. And Apple Music is a service that has, 50 million songs, 60 million songs. It's you can essentially listen to any music you want for $9.99 a month. Whereas TV Plus comes in and you can watch, Apple's originals, which, even if they're the best shows on earth, and it's debatable, but some of them are very good, there's only like 15 of them at the moment. So it's like, if Apple TV Plus's subscriber numbers could equal what Apple Music did, I would count that as a roaring success, right? And Apple Music, I think they got to 50 million in 1 year, and now 5 years on, they're around like the 75 million mark. If Apple TV Plus can match that, I think they're off to the races. I think that's incredible for arguably a service that is way less compelling than what Apple Music could be, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and Apple TV Plus with original content is unique from its competitors in that you can pay for Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and Apple TV and get different stuff from each one. Whereas with Apple Music, it in many ways it's the same content, a library of content as what Spotify has or other services.
Yeah, like
have.
Spotify and Apple Music are very homogenous, right? Yeah. Like you're not going to subscribe to both of them; it's one or the other. Whereas the TV market is like everyone trying to slice out their own. Unless
it's for like a unique podcast or something, we'll discuss later maybe.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that in a sec.
Yeah.
And then kind of a funny development is that in the morning, obviously everyone's talking about the Bloomberg story of Apple's whole, going to find these 90s TV shows that can, be fun or whatever. And then in the afternoon, Apple announced that they'd bought the rights to an upcoming brand new Tom Hanks film, which is called Greyhound. Now, this is a film that was actually developed and was originally going to be released theatrically by Sony, and it was meant to come out on like June the 12th or around that time frame. But obviously the pandemic means all the theaters are closed. There's no cinemas doing anything at the moment, and Sony's rescheduled most of their upcoming stuff to like 2021, 2022. But for whatever reason, they couldn't find a slot for this film to fit in, or they thought it wasn't going to be able to stack up between Disney's releases. So what they did instead is took it to the streaming services and said, "Do you want to buy this off of us?" And apparently, according to the reports, Netflix and Apple outbid Netflix. And so for about $70 million, Apple TV Plus will be showing the film Greyhound soon. They haven't said an official release date on TV Plus for everybody.
That's a good deal. If you get a free trial or pay $5 a month, you can watch a $70 million movie.
Yeah. Like, that's one of the funniest things about TV Plus is that it's probably the best, one of the things that are most cost efficient as a customer to buy, because if you actually cost out how much Apple's spent on content to date, it's like $6 billion or something, so in that range. And if you do $6 billion divided by $5 a month, divided by 12, you need to get to like 60 million subscribers just for them to break even. So just on a raw, here's how much money I'm paying Apple, and here's how much stuff Apple's giving me back, it's actually a pretty good deal, even though it doesn't feel like it when you look at just raw numbers. But anyway, so that's a pretty big blockbuster film that would have normally had a cinema run, and then been on for 3 months later go to like the standard video on demand stuff with like buying or renting, right? Which is kind of what we've seen happen with like the Trolls film, right? The Trolls World Tour. They did that instead of going to the cinemas in the current pandemic situation, they just took that straight to $20 rentals, right?
Yeah, which is something that probably could have existed when theaters, were allowed to be open, and then even when they continue to be open in the future. There's been more that have done that. I think the Apple TV app has marketed this pretty heavily. The Scooby-Doo
movie,
animated movie, I think, is doing the same thing. There were a few other movies doing the same thing, but this is, I mean, Tom Hanks is like, that's done nothing. It's
Yeah, Tom Hanks is a big name,
Yeah.
and this is different in that, it will just be available if you subscribe to Apple TV Plus, you can watch the film, and it's exclusive to TV Plus.
I kind of like those things where it's like, not like Apple bought an idea for a series, but they buy something that was going to exist somewhere else, definitely, because some of the stuff, like, it might not have actually materialized. But if it's like done and ready to go, and you fill up your catalog that way, then it feels like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of talks to the wider situation of all these streaming services are like looking everywhere they can now for content to fill over the next year, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And this films theatrical films that are struggling with their business is one avenue for streamers to walk in and give them a nice payout, because apparently Sony has spent about 50 million on the film, and so they sold it for 70, so they made 20 million, so they're happy. And
some movies bomb that you wouldn't think would bomb, like,
yeah, exactly.
So.
And I think and as soon as this news broke, obviously you get the skeptics on all sides of it or whatever. Someone said that Sony had been screening this movie as like a little test group since like 2 years ago, and it hadn't come out yet, which is sometimes a sign that it's not very good or it's having problems or whatever. So we'll wait and see when the film comes out.
Yeah.
I think Apple has shown that they're not stupid and that it was buying crap, right? So if they spent 70 million on a film, it's probably all right, if you know what I mean.
And there is the Sony connection where you've got former Sony executives running TV Plus.
And Apple's worked with Sony on For All Mankind, like they're the production studio for For All Mankind and stuff. So they're obviously like big pals. And now, in the light of Apple buying all this library content, everyone's talking about acquisitions again. And one of the names that keeps cropping up is Sony Pictures. So we'll see how that fares out. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's, everyone loves to name things that Apple's going to buy. And so there's all these strategies that Apple's clearly adapting to the pandemic situation. One of the things they've done is actually commissioned a special episode of Mythic Quest, which is the video game comedy show. And so they're doing a kind of like the Mythic Quest crew do a Zoom call, and then the trials and funniness and the outcomes of that. So that should be pretty funny. When I saw the little trailer for that, it immediately reminded me of the Modern Family episode from 5 or 6 years ago.
That's where the idea of group FaceTime came from.
Yeah, and it actually turns out that one of the writers of that episode is actually helping to make this episode. She works on Mythic Quest already, so that's funny where the connection is. But I just thought that was like, really interesting, and we'll have to wait and see when Apple is ready to actually like say, now you can watch all this library content, right? And actually see their messaging of how they're going to shift from the all originals. In September they were calling it the only all original streaming service. So there's going to have to be some machinations around there to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, they can just bury it even more in the TV app and never promote it, but you can go and find it.
Please make it better.
Yeah,
please make the thing get better.
We are sponsored this week by Bitrise. If you're an app developer, Bitrise offers iOS continuous integration and delivery that lets you build better applications faster. Bitrise includes a variety of iOS-specific solutions, from automatic code signing, support for the latest Xcode, virtual machines, and so much more. It offers more than 300 integrations to easily connect your processes and services that you need in your mobile development workflows. Setup becomes a breeze, and maintenance is drastically reduced, saving you both time and money. There's also out-of-the-box support for the major cross-platform frameworks that are used to create common iOS apps, as well as automatic iOS workflow configuration. Automate your tests for higher quality applications. And for continuous deployment, Bitrise saves you time by automating releases. You can automatically send your App Store signed builds to the store, deploy to third parties, and deploy to testing. Security is a priority of Bitrise, so you can sit back and relax knowing your data is safe. Bitrise is already used by the world's most productive mobile teams, so why not add it to your own development workflow today? Sign up for free at bitrise.io, that's bitrise.io, and learn more using the link in the show notes. Our thanks to Bitrise for supporting 9to5Mac Happy Hour.
And then the last thing is kind of an entertainment realm, which is that you're seeing some Apple podcasts or podcasts that are on Apple Podcasts and other podcast apps go exclusive to Spotify, and that's about the only example of somewhere that's buying up podcasts and making them exclusive. And so it becomes an Apple story because these are top charting shows on Apple Podcasts will have a big effect for Apple. And the big thing there is Apple doesn't really monetize podcasts right now, and that they're kind of working on the same thing. So if you kind of argue about this over a philosophical level, like what is a podcast, it certainly seems like Apple is interested in doing the same thing, and why not? But the news this week is that the Joe Rogan Experience will go to Spotify exclusively. I think it's both this year. It's now available on Spotify. Next year, it's Spotify only, and then there will be clips and I think episodes released just later on other platforms. But
my understanding is that there might be clips on other platforms, but the actual show and the video version of the show is exclusive to Spotify from September.
Yeah.
So if you want to watch the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, which is either the top or the second most popular podcast in the world, you have to go to the Spotify app. And obviously it is an Apple story because, Apple Music and Spotify are highly competitive, right? And like anything Spotify buys exclusively is another reason why someone might not be interested in Apple Music and instead go to the Spotify ecosystem, even though this show is going to be free to watch, so you won't need a Spotify subscription to watch it. It will just be a free podcast. You just have to get to it.
You've argued in the past that made the point that it's better for Spotify to attract users spending time on free content like podcasts rather than licensed content like music.
Yeah, and obviously they have had to pay hundreds of millions for the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
But in general, most podcasts you listen to inside of Spotify is paying zero for, so they're making money off of it, right? But I can't imagine that Apple's just going to sit back and let these big name shows no longer be available in Apple Podcasts, which then also makes Apple Music less interesting at the same time because it's more reason to just buy Spotify instead, right? Surely Apple's going to have to play this game as well. They've got loads of money. They can buy big name podcasts. They can make original shows. Like, yes, it kind of sucks for the open ecosystem of podcasting, but business wise, I don't think that's going to stop Apple from doing it.
They could buy podcasts, include them in the podcast app for free as they always have been, but just not let them be exclusive somewhere else.
Well, we will pay you $10 million not to be exclusive,
not to sell out.
Yeah, well, I think we've seen enough hires in the last year that clearly Apple is taking the podcast service way more seriously than they ever done before, right? They hired one of our former colleagues, Zach Khan, to run PR at the end of last year. They hired that Nat Geographic person we talked about recently. They've hired a few other people. I think it's kind of like an easy thing to throw into like the supposed Apple Media Bundle conglomerate service thing. Like you can get some original podcasts as well to go along in the mix. So I feel like it's an inevitability. And I think what we saw with TV is that, Apple's almost waited too long before they started making originals. And loads of other stuff had already started going to other places like Netflix or whatever. And so it'd be kind of stupid if they do the same thing again, where they sit on their laurels for 3 years, let Spotify buy 10 huge shows, and then they finally get into the game. Like, I feel like from a business perspective, it makes sense for them to start doing it sooner rather than later. And so I'm very curious to see what the podcast app will look like in iOS 14, because I feel like it's all kind of coming together for that to be.
Yeah, it could be some point in the 14 cycle that becomes a thing material. And one thing we know about podcasts and pandemics is podcasts are mostly pandemic proof unless you just run out of topics to discuss or something, but it doesn't have the TV Plus problem. Let's see. Yeah. So something I want to mention this week is that I've tested a pre-release HomeKit doorbell that does not cost an arm and a leg and does not look like it's made for an apartment building or an office building or something. It's called the Yobi B3. I'm working on the review now. Hopefully by the time the podcast is out, it'll already been published and I'll have it linked in. But it's really good. Like how just released, I think this past week, the Logitech camera that is made for HomeKit.
The circle view,
Yeah, it does it. And just like when you do HomeKit secure video, you lose the app. In some, well, in the early days at least, you lost access to that app, and it was just the HomeKit app that managed it. This is just like that. There's no, bogus Yobi app to have to deal with. It's strictly like the home app is what you manage this thing with. And for better or worse, I mean that's how it works. The upside of that is it works with HomeKit, and that's not been a market that's been filled. It costs $200, so it's like it's the same or less than like what a competitor would cost. But
and it works well.
Yeah, and it works well. Like someone rings your doorbell and you have alerts on for that, then you get the snapshot picture come to your watch or your iPhone or your iPad or Mac of like that's who's at your doorbell, and it's instant. So I've used other ones in the past where it's like the person might be gone by the time the snapshot is captured and taken. So in this case, like doorbell contacts, snapshot taken. It's really reliable. There's usually a finger on the doorbell because it's that contact point that snaps the shot. And so the hardware itself is like, it's not unattractive. It's a smart doorbell. It's not it's not just a little tiny thing, but it's got a camera and a big button on it. But I think it's pretty acceptable. The kind of challenge here is if you're only a HomeKit doorbell, like that's your app for interfacing with the doorbell, is that you can't offer any features that are outside of the HomeKit experience. So you're relying on Apple to offer features. And there's not HomeKit secure video on this doorbell yet. I asked, and they said that they're talking to Apple about if their chip can handle it or not. So there's a possibility that it could be like a better version that comes out. HomeKit secure video, I think, is pretty important for a doorbell. I think it's like made for that kind of situation because someone rings your doorbell, you don't just get the snapshot, you get like the whole interaction. Do they say anything? Do they move around? Do they steal your package? You can trigger like if it's just motion or if it's a pet or a car, those kind of things. You don't get any of that without HomeKit secure video. It's just HomeKit video, and the whole press a button, you get a doorbell thing. And because it's HomeKit, and you're at the mercy of what Apple builds into HomeKit for doorbells, then you don't get all the things.
And right now it's quite bare bones.
Yeah, it's been existing for several years. There's just not been a product that serves the market for less than several $100 only in Europe. You can't do some things that like Ring can do, and I don't even need to go into like detail or even like research and like what can Ring do. All the things that you see on commercials for Ring, like you won't get that. But what you will get is someone rings your doorbell, and if you've got a HomeKit lock, you have the control right there to unlock your door or talk back to the person. You can hear them, obviously, and then it works anywhere where where HomeKit works. So if you've got HomeKit on your Mac, you've got the Home app there, it works. If you have the Home Cam app from Aaron Pierce on your Apple TV, then that's one of the doorbell or one of the video sources you can have. And in that app, even on the iPhone and iPad, you can see all of your video streams live laid out. So that's really neat. And I was doing a Logitech Circle 2 inside the living room, but facing the front yard. It's like the makeshift front yard doorbell. And the backyard, which is fenced in, I just have it like wired in, and someone could steal it, but no one can go back there. So I was getting like the indoor noise, the indoor environmental information and everything, and it was just like not perfect. And the picture is so much clearer now. I don't think the camera is as good of quality as what you see on the Logitech camera, but because it's outside and not through a window, it's way better.
Yeah.
And it's totally acceptable for what it is. So.
And it's coming out for purchase soon?
You can pre-order it, and I saw on Reddit before I received my review unit that I requested someone saying that it was like that they had their pre-order was on the way. So, and I asked about that. I was like, so it seems like pre-order customers are getting theirs now. So that's the only thing too is like availability is like a little bit weird where they're still saying like you can pre-order. It seems like soon it will just be something you purchase and that gets shipped to you. So
we're finally getting out like smoke and mirrors land of doorbells being announced but not actually shipping.
I think what they kind of hinted at is that there's pre-orders, shipping. The next thing that'll happen is that they were a Kickstarter campaign, and so they've got to fulfill all of that, and then they'll be clear to say you purchase, we mail it to you like normal.
Got ya.
It only comes in this it's like kind of coppery gold. Like it's not gold, it's not rose gold. It's kind of bronzy, I guess. But it's a faceplate, so it could be changed in the future. I asked though, will that be the only option for now, or will they have options in the future? Like, I don't know, black that could kind of go anywhere. They said no plans for any different colors yet. So
they've learned from AirPods on that one.
Yeah, and then one of the things with the doorbell camera is that where it aims is very critical, and so a doorbell might just face into your street and not where the front of the door is, and so it accommodates that by having two different adapters, one to aim up or down based on placement, or left or right based on placement. The only thing is the adapter's white, so you've got your house and then a white adapter, and then the black and like kind of gold colored doorbell. So
definitely sounds like they could do a slightly better color coordination.
Yeah. But it's interesting because so they're using Yobi as the brand, B3 as the model, and I think they're a company called iBaby Labs that makes baby monitors and has like this whole business of baby monitors, and they just saw this as an opportunity for like maybe the owners wanted this to be a thing, and then here it is, and they actually they beat Ring, which got bought by Amazon, but still said that they were committed to HomeKit like 2 years ago. August, which had a doorbell camera that they said that the CEO had a press release that was like, we included this chip because we knew this would be HomeKit compatible, and they just erased that from the internet. And there's like, that's it. So
the doorbell story of HomeKit is very long and winding.
Yeah. It's I had some fun with the piece because it's like, this is, it can be dead simple and meet the minimum requirements, but like it's kind of binary. It's like, yes, it exists and you can buy it, or no, it doesn't. And there's not a whole lot of room between like, well, how is it though?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't really care how it is. It's finally here. Like, So, and it's not terrible.
It's just crazy. The whole HomeKit doorbell thing is just so crazy how it took so long for anything to materialize.
Yeah, I mean, and so the Robin Telecom stuff is what was there before, is like, at least something fits the category, and that seems to be really is only for Europe. I got my hands on the compact version. It's huge. You have the huge version.
I've got the non-compact version. It's massive.
Yeah. And I was thinking I'll just put it in the back door because who cares what it looks like back there? And then I'll remove the HomeKit camera back there that's just like positioned back there, and but it's powered by Ethernet or something. Like it's weird.
It's powered over Ethernet type situation. It's clearly meant for businesses, right? Because they have powered Ethernet everywhere.
Yeah,
through the walls and stuff.
Yeah, I could probably pull it off, but I'm not in a hurry for that. So.
Yeah, if it was like smaller, it'd be a lot more compelling and not expensive, but it somehow manages to be both big and pricey.
Yeah, with the Yobi B3 for $200, it fit over I just removed the other doorbell, put it on the existing hardware, and then there's like the chime in the house where the sound comes from. And some of these things will have like systems where you can bring your own speaker system, like, or you're extended basically. I once lived where there was no doorbell, and you could buy like a fake doorbell and a fake speaker, like to pull it off. This just fit over your existing stuff, so it rings my old doorbell chime, and it had like an adapter that needed, like, if it needed to be powered, and I didn't end up needing that. So I was hoping to have that finished yesterday, and then wrap it up today if I didn't get to it. But then I was contacting 100 different contacts over COVID contact tracing, so
nice.
A little bit
behind. We will look out for it.
Yeah, but by the time this comes out, it should be there. And then finally, there's a new Apple Watch activity challenge. What's up with that?
Yeah, so they missed Earth Day this year, which is a bit odd, but
there's a pandemic.
There was a pandemic, fair enough.
Yeah, but that's the reason, I assume.
They've got back. Yeah, I'll give them that one.
It's not like when they missed the Turkey 5K thing, and it was like, why? They broke it,
Yeah.
It was a pandemic.
Yeah, so they've got back on their feet, and they found a very similar event, which is for World Environment Day. They have scheduled the next Apple Watch Activity Challenge, and that's on June 5th. And obviously, they're not promoting you to go too far astray. So the challenge is to ensure that you stand up for at least 1 minute during 12 hours a day. So basically, if you can finish your stand ring, you can win the nice little badge. And they've got some stickers as well.
Yeah, I saw a response to the first reply to this on Twitter. Like, I don't read comments, but I do read tweets. And it was, what's the challenge in that? It's just to, fill your stand ring. I think it's clever. I think it's very gentle, and that's all we need. It's cool that they've found a way to do this without saying, go outside and run, or go, all the things that they've done in the past. And they could definitely do one with they did the yoga one, I think, at the beginning or sometime last year. That's repeatable. But it is sensitive. It's even sensitive to ask someone to do a 5K on Thanksgiving, but that's at least a tradition for a lot of people. So with this,
and I'll say, it is a challenge to do your stand ring, at least in my house. I do not fill my stand ring very often, due to a combination of laziness and the fact that sometimes the Apple Watch doesn't actually register it, and you have to if you're not watching it like a hawk, you sometimes get messed up or missing an hour here or there. I do not think I've closed many stand rings in the last year. I do the Move Go every single day. I do the Exercise Go every day. Stand ring is elusive.
Well, so are you going to stand up for, what do they say, stand up for the planet? It's on you, man.
I'll try. Yeah, I'll try. Yeah. At least it's a world challenge for a change. I feel like it's been ages since there's one. They've all been US only recently.
That's right. And you may have mentioned this, but is this a first for this type of event?
They've never done World Environment Day.
And before. What that means is that they can't recycle past artwork and metals. They can't just change the number of the year on it. There's something original about
potentially, these might have been the Earth Day assets. When they missed Earth Day, they just recycled them for June instead.
But they're at least not last year's Earth Day assets.
No, the stickers are new.
Yeah, so cool.
But that's cool.
June 5th, which would ordinarily be about WWDC. This time that will be on, what is it, the 25th?
2nd it starts,
22nd of June. Okay, so it's the last Monday of the month. So you can kick off the month by standing up for the planet. That is awesome. Cool. Let's see what else we had to promote before we head away. I released a new episode of 9 to 5 Mac Watch Time this week with developer David Smith. He was on 3 episodes ago, but he posted this thing on his 37th birthday where he deadlifted 300 pounds, and it was of great significance to him because it was all part of this 3-year journey with the Apple Watch. So he was awesome to come back the day after his birthday and discuss that. And it was I think that was one of those really good episodes. So check that out, 9 to 5 Mac Watch Time. With my Space Explorer project, we will see the launch of American astronauts from the U.S. for the first time since 2011 when the shuttle ended on Wednesday, May 27th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And so that will be a big ordeal for the site, and can't wait to cover that. And it's also SpaceX's first time sending humans, so it's historic for a few different reasons. And and then the 9 to 5 Mac stuff just keeps coming. So that's all.
Not too long, and we'll be heading WWDC stuff.
Yeah, it's exciting. That's exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. There's still stuff kind of popping up too, the Power Beats colors that we discussed. Mm-hmm. Now they're visualized, so it seems to be that's
and we're still kind of waiting on a Bloomberg report or something of iOS 14 features, because normally Mark has one of them before.
Sure.
But that hasn't come out yet, so we're kind of there's going to be a lot of stuff in the next month or so ahead of the conference.
That's right. All right,
and then the conference itself is going to be a whole different kettle of fish in so many ways.
Yeah. All right, well, that is the Happy Hour podcast for this week. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ApolloZach and read my space news at spaceexplorer.com. Benjamin, you're on Twitter at
BZMAO.
And you blog at
BZMAO.com.
All right. You can also follow 9 to 5 Mac on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can search, if you search in your podcast app for 9 to 5 Mac, we also have a network of shows from 9 to 5 Mac Daily, where you get a briefing of the news that day, to our sister sites with Electric, 9 to 5 Mac, or 9 to 5 Toys, 9 to 5 Google. We have 10 podcasts in total, including another 9 to 5 Mac podcast called Apple at Work.
And no Spotify exclusives.
Not yet. If they offer, they've got to also include membership, because that's $100 million is nothing if they don't include a free account. So we'll see there, but. Yep, check out your podcast app for those shows, because even if it's not your interest, there's probably something out there for you. And we will be back next week. If you haven't yet, you can check out the video version of this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/9to5Mac and find our faces there in real motion, not real time, but real motion. And I think by the keynote, we want to do a live recording. So stay tuned for that.
Figure that out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to do because Electric, they do a live video podcast every week. So we'll just do what they do. But in the meantime, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we will be back next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
For more news, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe to the various 9to5Mac podcasts for even more coverage. Check the links down below in the description to subscribe today.